Okay. Hello everyone and welcome to my session. My name is Wilk. I'm a VMware Level 2 engineer at Triangle Computer Services in Dublin. As you probably guessed by looking at the title of this session, this is not going to be a normal session. Why? Mostly because this is the first time I've ever been to VMworld, and this is also obviously a very first session I ever do at VMworld. This year, in summary, has been huge for me because not only I attend the VMworld for the very first time, but also a vExpert for the very first time. So the session in summary is going to be about a journey that we went through back in Poland when I was working still as a VMware/server engineer in Poland. The whole journey was very, very complicated, and we had many roadblocks along the way. And that's why it's called IT Rehab trip, because we went from a very poor design to a proper design to cloud infrastructure. And what you see there, Datacenter-in-a-Garage, is exactly what we started with back in the day. So, story time. The story begins a couple of years ago in Poland. I was working in a very small team which didn't really have too much experience with infrastructures, virtualization, or anything enterprise level at all. But we had many SMB clients. So these were mostly people looking to have their stuff working. They had maybe Hyper-V, maybe physical servers, loads of file servers, you know, not something that I'm working on right now. And one of the biggest things that they were looking for from us was data protection. This is well before GDPR and all of that stuff, so they were not looking to have their data compliant with anything. They were mostly looking to have their data protected from attacks or from errors, and they wanted to be running as soon as possible. The thing to note here is that Poland is not a very European market, not a very open market. And what I mean by this is that in Poland, we're really looking to get our stuff done locally. So there were multiple solutions to get your backup done in a cloud, to have your data saved on the internet, on reliable public or private clouds. But the clients that we had were not really interested in that. They wanted to have their data served and protected locally. The problem was that there was nobody around who could do that. There was no local cloud, no local backup provider, so to speak. So the idea was born to become a backup cloud provider. The first one actually in Poland. The problem was that the idea itself was brilliant. The idea could bring us revenue, the idea could put us on the map. The problem was that we had no idea how to do that. The team consisted of myself, and at that time I was mostly experienced with networking, physical servers, and the best thing I was doing with VMware was workstation. The other people in the team had more experience with AD and stuff like that, Windows-based support, and again, no VMware. So what we did was that we purchased 3 servers, and exactly as the title said, we put them in a garage, purchased vSphere on top of it, and started playing around. This is where the first problem arose, which is design, or actually lack of thereof. So, as I was the one that was the most interested about the whole idea, I was tasked with choosing the backup product. I was researching, multiple solutions, thinking which product that we're using right now to do local backups could we implement on cloud level and provide it to our clients over the internet. And then all the other tasks were gradually assigned to me as well. So the task of setting up, the task of designing how ESXis should talk with each other, you know, networking layer, application layer, database layer, all of that. On top of those 3 hosts and a vSphere license and everything else, I was given access to KBs, CBT nuggets, and that's about it. So the design that was put in place was mostly based on these videos and these articles. And you can imagine how bad it is. Now, I see the look on your faces, and you're probably thinking, this is not a realistic scenario. This is something that shouldn't happen. This is something that a good engineer should stop and say, okay, we're not doing this. And I know that this is how it sounds, but this is just like this whole scenario. You can apply it to anything. It doesn't have to be a backup cloud. It doesn't have to be a vSphere implementation that you're thinking of. It could be an application that you're not aware of, but you want to base your business on. So let's say some strange CRM system, some strange accounting software that you want to put in your network to provide to your clients or provide internally to your staff. And without knowing it, without actually having experience, you can't really plan it. And without having a design, you're stuck with what we were stuck with, which was a very poorly designed infrastructure, which made, on the design level, about as much sense as this. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm kind of into memes, so sorry if anybody is offended by putting memes on here, but you know, that's how it works. I have to grab your attention somehow. So okay, we had a very bad design. Potentially we could work on this, but you know, it's only so long that you can rely only on KBs, forums, and videos. At some point the infrastructure broke and we had to rebuild it. We rebuilt it after we learned our lessons. We've asked experts to help us. We've asked consultants to come over and help with the design. And it seemed for a second that we're working fine. So okay, so we've learned our lesson. We should have a design. But then a second problem arose, which is cutting costs. Because at this point we've paid loads of money to consultants, to experts, to the data center that we eventually moved into, and we're looking how we can cut the costs. The infrastructure was all based about virtual stuff. We didn't have the budget to purchase physical hardware such as routers. So for instance, our routing within the network obviously wasn't handled by NSX because that was completely out of the budget. It was handled by an open source VM called frst. And frst is a great system. It's a great system, but you have to remember about 2 things with it. You get no support, absolutely no support, and if you're updated, you won't even get support on forums. But the thinking was that we can cut the costs this way. We can replace stuff which normally we have to pay for with open source, because it's free to download, but it's not the case. And it's not the case in any environment that you design. Of course, I would be lying if I'd say that I don't recommend using open source, because if you look at my blog, I'm always writing about Linux and the development of open source stuff. It's just that when you want to go open source, you need to remember exactly this. It's never free stuff. It's just free code. You can work with it. You can apply your own patches. You can adjust it to your needs. But it will never be a replacement for a proper paid software without support. So instead of going CentOS, you should go Red Hat, and so on, so on, so on. Again, we've implemented some of these open source solutions, and it seemed for a second that we're fine, that there will be no problems whatsoever. Again, it seemed like the whole environment was working stable. But then, just as I've said, the biggest problem that we had was that we had no support. We had our consultants, we had our experts, but they were not specialized in open source. So when that frst VM failed, the only thing we could rely on were the forums. And if you ever used forums, you know very well that those are people just like us. They're not obligated to help you. They're not obligated to provide you with premium support. So they took days, weeks to reply to our messages. And if you have your router down for more than a few hours, you're looking at a complete infrastructure outage. So yeah, that's a big no. Always go for premium support. Always, if you want to go open source, you need to consider paying for it and not consider open source as an alternative to paying. It's not a way to cut costs. It's a great way to pay back to the community by developing it alongside the open source teams like the Debian organization, CentOS organization. These are great, but you can't think about them like some IT Santa Claus that just will be giving out stuff for free. You need to remember again that you need to pay for stuff to have your support. And then again, after we scrapped the idea of using open source as a way of cutting costs, we came to a point where the infrastructure was pretty stable. It was stable, it was working, it was doing its job, but we started overthinking this. At this point, all of the team were more or less experienced with VMware, experienced with networking, experienced with VMs. Some of us started getting certifications, so we've learned about the cool new stuff, about vSAN, about FT, about NSX. And you're geeks like us, you're geeks like me. So when you hear about new stuff such as vSAN or FT, we geeks get so into it. Oh, this is so cool. This is vSAN, I need to try it. I don't have to purchase SANs. I can just put disks into the host and then create some virtual data store. But we cannot go fanboy on this. We can't, we did go fanboy. We love the idea of vSAN, and vSAN is just the thing that failed the hardest in this infrastructure, because I was saying that we had low budget. So as you know, vSAN requires SSDs. That was out of question. So instead of using a proper vSAN, we went for a different kind of solution which allowed us to use normal disks, physical disks like HDDs, and went with it. But it failed again. We had a working infrastructure that was doing its job, but because by overthinking and over-designing what we had, we managed to break it again. So you can't do something like that. You always have to step back and think, do I really need that new cool thing? Do I need this new extra feature which everyone is talking about? The new thing on the market right now is artificial intelligence, blockchain. And of course it will be cool to implement it in your designs and have it serve your clients and be able to advertise yourself as the first company using blockchain to do something. But you always have to step back and ask yourself, do I need this? Is it going to work with my particular project? Is it going to work in this particular design? If not, you'll end up with something just like we ended up with, which was a faulty, nearly not working vSAN, which we had to quickly roll back and go back to local storage. Otherwise, the clients would stop paying. So at this point, the whole project looked something along like this. The profit was barely none. Investment was way too high, too much, and frustration was huge. The only thing that we managed to have our stats high was coffee usage, as you can see on the diagram, which I made up. What I want you to take from this session is that to do proper design, you always have to think twice about every step that you take. You need to have design, but you cannot over-design your infrastructures. You can cut costs some way with open source. You can invest in open source, but you can't rely on this purely. You can't rely 100% on open source, hoping that forums will help you out. And also, you need to think about the new features. Are they needed? Are they not needed? Should I go for this or should I stop? After this whole project finished and I've completed my IT rehab trip, because I've stopped doing all that stupid things, I think that, you know, the design itself that I originally did wasn't that bad, even though I had no experience with it. So this is why I think that everyone could try designing their own stuff. I think we want to get through this session without problems. Okay. Okay. Anyway, we'll wrap up, I think, in this case. Thank you very much for listening. We finished a bit faster than I originally thought. If you have any questions, please let me know now or otherwise. Thank you very much. Thanks.